Hello from the Barista Course Hamburg. Today, the Ligre region is on our table for the second time, along with the matching CG grinder. We have had a lot of time to test it since our first impression video, and what exciting findings we have discovered, you will learn now. In our first video, we already shared a bit about the company Grombach, so we will skip that now. Now, it is back here on our table in a double pack. Specifically in a double pack because we believe that the design of the two devices wonderfully complements each other. It is made as if from a single cast, as if it were one machine, and for purely aesthetic reasons, I would find it very questionable to place another grinder there. But that is, of course, a matter of taste. The names Jun and CG sound somewhat exotic, and they are indeed. Jun means one in Malay or Burmese, and CG also means one, specifically in Javanese. And with that, the two names are probably already a program, as I assume that this will not be the only combination available on the market soon.
In this combination, in black, the price is €5,860, and in beige, the machine will cost €5,160.
Regarding the quality of the two machines and what they deliver, we can say it is almost a bullseye. And that applies to the first two machines, with a few minor limitations or perhaps a few wishes that we will address shortly. But 1,000 respects, it is a great combination. Design and aesthetics are, of course, purely a matter of taste. I have been professionally involved with art design, shaping, etc. for a long time. Therefore, this machine has hit the mark perfectly for me. I find them incredibly aesthetic, and they stand out clearly from the general range of machines. This also explains the success that the machine has had, as since our first impression video, it has now, I believe, won its third design award. The basic concept of this machine, or the idea behind it, is truly reflected in even the smallest details, including tools that you can order additionally. In terms of design, everything is practically seamless. This design reduction is also reflected in the operation of the machine, as it guides you in terms of usability and helps you achieve a good espresso, create great foam, and thus make smooth macchiatos and cappuccinos, etc., without needing much prior knowledge. You can also dive a little deeper and adjust various parameters to suit your personal preferences for your beans and your espresso. Americans have always come up with nice abbreviations for all sorts of things, and this machine really works according to the KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. In this case, stupid is not the right expression, as the machine itself is very intelligent. But you can feel free to be a little stupid to operate this machine easily without having to be very knowledgeable, as I said. And thus, this machine represents a new concept, a new type of machines that are gradually coming onto the market or have already come onto the market. Recently, there was a very interesting discussion panel with 4 different companies at the Frankfurt Coffee Festival. I find that one of them doesn't quite fit, as it still follows a different concept. But maybe take a look for yourself. It's very interesting. Lucas from Brucemeyer initiated and conducted this conversation, I assume. Really well done. I think it's great. It's super interesting. We'll link it for you. Just take a look, because you'll get a bit of insight into where the journey is heading, what thoughts the machine manufacturers have, and what might be coming to the market soon. But just briefly, let's go over the external specifications of the machine again. As proud as the price is, it stands just as proudly in terms of size.
It has a width of approximately 45 cm, a depth of 30 cm without the portafilter, and a height of 40 cm. And in combination with the grinder, you then have a width of almost 60 cm.
There is a lot of space in width, but little in depth. And with that, it actually makes clear where it belongs, or rather, where it can find its place. Unfortunately, it does not fit in our kitchen because it is simply too wide for this combination. But I certainly do not belong to the target audience solely because of the price. The financial ecosystem of this machine will certainly be more common. For example, in the Hamburg-Elbe suburbs, we sometimes encounter kitchens that are larger than entire apartments here in Hamburg. And before we get to the really exciting part of this machine, let's take a moment to look at the exterior. You have a great top bowl here that you can simply pull off towards the front. You can remove the inner part and put it in the dishwasher. There is a small float here that indicates whether the drip tray is overflowing. It has a capacity of approximately 700 ml, which is sufficiently sized. It has a dual heating system, let's call it that. It is a combination of a thermoblock and one steam boiler. The thermoblock is responsible for the espresso extraction, and the steam boiler, with a capacity of approximately 1.6 liters, is responsible for frothing the milk. And the steam wand itself is a Q-Touch steam wand, which is double-walled and additionally has an air supply at the bottom. You can work manually, as you are used to with many machines, and you can leave the milk frothing to the machine. And I can already say that it works fantastically. By the way, you can turn the steam boiler on or off through the menu. In addition to the steam wand, it also has a hot water outlet. I find that to be very intelligently designed, as it is located just before the brew group. The water is not drawn from the steam wand, from the steam boiler, instead from the thermoblock and the brew group, and not, that is the good part, from the brew group itself, but positioned before it. This means that the water does not go into the brewing group, but is released here through a small outlet beforehand. As mentioned, this has the advantage that you do not draw the water from the steam boiler. The water quality coming from the steam boiler somewhat depends on how much steam you draw and how much water you use. For example, for an Americano, on average, if you have very few steam pools and draw very little water from your boiler, it may be that the water is very, very old. It could be that it has been sitting there for several weeks, and standing water is not necessarily beneficial for the taste. In other words, with this solution, you always have fresh water in, for example, your Americano. The heating time of this machine is extremely fast. I believe the website states 3 minutes and 50 seconds. We have set it at 4 minutes here, and it achieves a good heating time also, because the brewing group itself is preheated with heating cartridges, as is the case with some other machines nowadays. It is not quite as heavy as an e-brewing group. However, I find it advantageous that it has the completely normal Faema bajonet. And since we have a dual heating system, it is not a dual boiler, but rather a mixed system in terms of techniques. We can simultaneously extract an espresso and froth milk. And it does this even with 2 pumps. The basic idea of using 2 pumps is simply that you do not want a pressure hole to occur during extraction. This machine operates with pressure and flow profiles. This means that one pump focuses solely on the espresso extraction and can regulate and control the pressure, while the other pump concentrates only on the steam extraction. Both pumps are vibration pumps that are very, very quiet, but of course not quite as quiet as a rotary pump. One thing the machine lacks is a heated cup tray. Personally, I don't find it that dramatic, as I always pull a blank shot before extracting my espresso, during which I can place the cups underneath and pre-warm them accordingly. The distance from the top plate to the portafilter spout is not particularly large at 7.5 cm. You can fit a large cappuccino cup underneath without any problem. You can easily place a scale underneath with an espresso cup, although you don't necessarily need the scale, but we'll get to that shortly. The quality of the design, at least in my opinion, is also reflected in the materiality and especially in the craftsmanship. It is anodized aluminum, and the edges are extremely well finished. It really is all of a piece. There's nothing to be found where you could say they could have done something a bit different. No, it is a truly excellently crafted machine, and this clearly reflects the long-standing expertise of the company Unpack in the construction of such components. After all the external specifications, we finally come to what really defines the machine, its operating concept. And we at Usand also had to rethink a bit. We had to learn anew or simply learn more. It's quite interesting how everything is structured. And once you understand that, you have to say, it's really clever. And to make the concept a bit more understandable, let's just go into the menu. Up here we have the display where we can see 2 different indicators. The first display is the extraction temperature, which is adjustable. The second display concerns the temperature of the steam boiler. Let's briefly touch on that. Now you can also turn the boiler on and off. And you can easily choose the temperature of the boiler, thus regulating the steam pressure to a certain extent. Now let's go back again, and now we have two levels. As mentioned, you see this level here, and then you have these three dots at the top. And through these three dots, you can access the settings menu. You can set the time for when the machine should turn on and off. Then you have the option to choose an eco mode. You can take a look at the parameters available, such as how much coffee you have already extracted and how much water has passed through. You can set maintenance parameters, such as the hardness level of your water. However, these are also things that are asked during the initial setup of the machine. Now you see the point Use and Easy mode here. Under the Easy mode, we now have adjustable options. You can set the amount of hot water for your regular hot water outlet, and you can determine the water amount for a single and a double espresso. The machine also helps you a bit here by simply explaining things. It has a built-in volumetric feature that allows you to determine how much water goes into the portafilter. But that doesn't mean you know how much comes out down there, as it depends on your grind size and also on the pressure profile, since the machine can operate with different pressure profiles. And now you have a second level, and we are going back out here. And you reach the second level by carefully adjusting the brewing temperature in order to achieve the desired result. Now we have the coffee settings, and we can adjust a few more additional parameters. It should be noted that the machine always operates with a pressure profile, and I can choose this pressure profile. However, I cannot deselect it. This means I cannot brew in a classic way, like with a regular machine where I simply turn it on and off without a pressure profile set, but just pump on, pump off, like with many e-machines. So there is always a pressure profile stored here, and I can change this pressure profile. I can, for example, say that I want to change the temperature from 94 to, for example, 90 degrees, as if I could change the bar pressure itself. Of course, I can set it here between 8 and 10 bar. So now I also have the option to change the so-called brewing pause, which is always there, namely in a range from 0.5, 6 seconds maximum. So I will leave it at the classic 2 seconds. Or let's keep it at that. The next thing is that the machine provides us with 3 profiles. And the interesting thing is, they are really quite different. The taste that results from this is distinctly different, and we can change these brewing profiles. We can change the temperature, we can change the pressure, and we can change the brewing pause. And these 3 brewing profiles, in turn, have an impact on the easy mode, because I have 2 options to operate the machine. Up here there are these butterfly buttons, as I would call them. I can either press them down or pull them up. Automatically, the easy mode activates when I go down. This means everything is taken care of for me. I no longer need to stop. The machine does it on its own. If I move the toggle switch up, I would have to stop the machine manually again. And as I said, this saved brewing profile is now found in my easy mode. And in this way, I can absolutely set my espresso just the way I perfectly like it, making it delicious and enjoyable. I hope I was able to explain that to you somewhat. I will just show you how it would work in the workflow. So I am now in my normal menu going to the coffee settings, and I know my coffee now and want to say, okay, I might want to set the brewing pause to half a second. I have already selected my profile. I'll leave the pressure as it is, and I'll also leave the temperature as it is. And now I can simply say, I'm starting to paint and working with this profile, and let's see what comes out of it. I haven't set our grinder precisely yet. And the interesting thing about this brewing method with these brewing profiles is that the machine tries to correct a potentially suboptimal grind size. There are also other machines that can already do that. Of course, this is always only possible to a certain extent. If I were to set it extremely coarsely now, it wouldn't quite work. Conversely, if I set my grind size too fine, then this system naturally also reaches its limits. But if I have already found my grind size at some point, which we have now, then the machine helps me automatically brew my coffee in a way that it tastes good. And it works. And it functions. We have already achieved this with other machines as well. We are trying it out now. And I know, for example, that our coffee, which we are currently using here, tastes the best or is the most delicious when we use a brewing temperature of 89 degrees and a brewing ratio of 1 to 2. This means there are 16 grams in here. We want to get 30 grams out, and the brewing time should be about 21 seconds. And now we are simply trying out how our coffee turns out and what results we achieve. We will still check this with a scale, and we are currently only working with easy mode. And here we are already shown how long our extraction time lasts. We are now at 22 seconds. That is actually already a good value for our espresso. And we have 19.4 grams in our cup now. That means I have a little more than I actually want in my cup. Let's try it anyway. We can still optimize a bit. Absolutely. The temperature is already excellent. I have nicely suppressed the bitter compounds that this coffee often has or quickly develops by lowering the temperature. That's already great. Now, however, I would like to have a little less than the 19 grams in the cup because I simply prefer it to be a bit stronger, a bit creamier, and to have a slightly creamier sensation on the tongue. Let's try that again right now. Now we will do it this way. We go into our easy mode profile. And for the double espresso, we will simply say 2001. We don't want 79 ml, but I would just try 69, let's say. 10 ml less. Let's see what comes out of it. The grinder has a tolerance of approximately plus or minus 0.1 G, which is 110. And absolutely normal, which is wonderful. So, we now have a result of 17.2 G. That means we have significantly less, because we also entered that we want to bring in less ml. And now I will try it. It already looks a bit different. Still great. Although I'm not so sure if I actually like the first one a bit better. Let's see. It's a bit cold now though. Yes. Absolutely. The first one with a bit more liquid, so to speak, with a slightly different brew ratio, tastes even better to me, has significantly more chocolatey notes. And so I can now gradually approach my espresso. For that, I obviously need to know a little bit. So, if I really get a bit more familiar with the whole topic of flow and extraction and how coffee reacts, then I can switch to nerd mode and actually display everything, allowing me to recognize whether my grind size is set correctly or if it might still need adjustment. But for that, I would need to delve a little deeper into the topic of extraction and flow rate in order to assess it. This is then the so-called I am extracting but actually not in nerd mode. Therefore, the term nerd mode is actually not quite accurate for me. Personally, I would understand nerd mode more like I do with other machines. As I mentioned, with the Unica, with the Maro, I believe it's called Meticulous, which is coming to the market soon. There are quite a few machines that can do that, so I can really make deeper adjustments with middle stages. I can't do that here. I only have these three, in quotation marks, just these three different pressure profiles available, which I can influence accordingly, as you just saw. Once again, briefly summarized how to work with the machine or how we would work with it. You have these two levels. The lowest level is the nerd mode level, where you have three different pressure profiles stored, which you can also influence in terms of temperature, pressure, and brewing pause, which once set are immediately saved, but of course you can always vary them again. These three pressure profiles really produce a different result. This means that the coffee tastes significantly different. You can simply try things out and play around. and as I said, also play with the 3 parameters again. However, through all the displays that it provides us in this mode, we can already get an idea of how our coffee will taste and how it will be extracted. But as I said, we work in easy mode by simply flipping the lever down and letting the machine run, and there we just see how long our entire extraction takes, including the pre-brew time and brew pause. And when we know how our coffee needs to be set normally, how many seconds it should actually run on average, we can accordingly adjust our grinder. Our grind size, what we have also checked, is the temperature stability of the machine and whether it is really capable of heating up within these 4 minutes. And yes, it is capable. We found in our tests that there seems to be a small offset with our machine. However, one must always consider this with a bit of caution because our measuring portafilters also have a certain tolerance and a certain margin of error, let's put it that way. And if you don't have a measuring portafilter at home, which logically very few people will have, and it's not like a pool group where you could just install a thermometer, instead you can simply use the best measuring device you have, which you carry with you, your tongue and your sense of taste. As many will surely know, coffee extracted at a slightly too low temperature often tends to be somewhat sour. Coffee extracted at too high a temperature tends to be bitter. And if I feel like I'm not managing well with the temperature, or if it could be the temperature that makes my coffee too sour, then I simply set the machine a bit hotter or vice versa. And what we could definitely determine in our temperature tests is that the machine is ready for use after 4 minutes. That works. What we always recommend is, of course, to perform a rinse cycle, preferably with a double shot, meaning approximately 25 seconds. Then you have also properly heated the last remnants of your portafilter and can pull a good espresso, especially since it does not have a cup holder where the cups can be pre-warmed. Place your cups underneath, warm them up, then pull your first espresso. And whatever you always do, if your grind size is not completely off, then it will definitely save your espresso. And the result is what you have in the cup, and that is fun. What is equally enjoyable is the low energy consumption. We tested the energy consumption with the boiler turned on and arrived at a value for the first espresso, including a rinse of 0.128 kilowatt-hours. 100 kilowatt hours, including the initial frothing for your cappuccino, amounts to a value of 0.43 kilowatts. I don't need to say much. And just as consistently as it makes it easier for you to extract espresso, it also makes it easier for you to froth milk. And that is actually a process that is not so simple. Many people struggle with this, and we repeatedly notice in our courses that this is actually sometimes the most difficult point. And for that, it has an automatic setting. It has a Q-tap based plant, as mentioned, and you can set your milk foam to 10 different strengths. We go to our button, to our easy mode button, and can now specify the foam thickness we want. Then just tap it again and get started. And as you can see now, we really have a wonderfully beautiful fine foam with which we can make great latte art. And we will just try that again, this time with a slightly stronger foam consistency. We now just want to try if we can create a latte macchiato foam with that. One thing I forgot to mention is that the milk must be cold. This means you need to take milk out of the refrigerator, otherwise the temperature sensor won't be able to detect this milk and bring it to the right temperature. This is basically not a problem. You always have cold milk available. If you do want to use warm milk, meaning milk at room temperature, you can still work with the manual mode, and as you can see, there is enough power. Through this easy mode, we can really influence a few things. In other words, we can simply influence how strong our milk foam is. And here we have the option to choose between 3 temperatures. Let's just give it a try. meantime, we simply make an espresso. Now I have waited a bit too long. However, you could have seen that we can do both at the same time. That is, of course, obvious. So now we also have a completely different foam consistency. So I'll slowly and carefully pour some in, just a little bit more. You see, a beautiful latte macchiato foam. It also stays nice and long. Now we simply pour a little espresso in. Unfortunately, the milk is not cool enough yet, meaning the espresso is falling a bit too quickly for me now. But you can already see how much foam we have here, and this foam will also stay nice and long. Finally, we come to our summary regarding the machine. It can be summarized that where there is a lot of light, there is also a bit of shadow. However, I don't necessarily think these are criticisms, but rather perhaps wishes. Wishes for what the machine could perhaps do a little differently or better. First, the fixed water connection should be mentioned, which is not present and does not exist. Certainly not as relevant for private households, but I can also see this machine, for example, in galleries and showrooms, which I will get to shortly. A fixed water connection would certainly be beneficial there. In this context, the lack of the last shot option should also be mentioned. This means that, although you may still have a little water in the tank, the machine might simply stop during the last shot. This means that it does not extract until the end. This would certainly be possible, as there is still a little water in the tank. In this context, it is also worth mentioning that you cannot insert a filter into the water tank. It would certainly be advantageous to have filtered water, or rather, you should use filtered water with the machine. Also, with a small limitation, you have the option to program the hardness of your water at home. And accordingly, the machine also tells you when you need to descale it, and that is in turn an advantage. You can descale them, and you can also descale the boiler. Descaling thermoblocks is generally not a problem, but with boilers it is often a challenge. And you can descale this boiler. You can completely empty the boiler, which is something that very few machines can do, and thus you can also use descaling agents. And with that, we come to the last point that we consider to be in need of improvement, and that is the missing Wi-Fi connection. The machine operates very much on a software basis, and you have no way to cover the software. At least you cannot do it yourself, as it does not have a Wi-Fi connection. There is also a small limitation. When you buy the machine, you have a so-called service warranty for 2 years. This means that for 2 years, you can return the machine, which will even be picked up from your home, and then the latest software will automatically be installed during a service. Furthermore, Ligre is currently in the process of building a dealer network, and as far as I know, it is planned that you will be able to drop off the machine there for updates and maintenance once it is established. And this, as mentioned, is free for the first 2 years, currently even with a free pickup. A really great feature, which is currently limited due to the lack of Wi-Fi connection, is the lying guide. This brewing guide is meant to help you adjust your coffee and set your grinder. Currently, however, this guide is unfortunately set to only one type of coffee bean, specifically a variety from the company Ligre, which itself now has 3 types of coffee beans. And in the future, we expect that this guide will also be expanded through software updates. And where is the sunshine of the machine now? It's quite simple. It starts with the design. Of course, that's a matter of taste. But as I said, it hit the mark for me. But it integrates wonderfully into any environment where a special design is required. As far as I'm concerned, you have a gallery, you have a great kitchen. So recently, for example, I remember that a friend asked me, who has a rental studio and is a photographer, which machine I would recommend to him. We have many agencies with us that want to have a great espresso. They are there alone, have no barista, and are of course completely overwhelmed with a normal espresso machine or whatever. Here you certainly have the advantage that the machine supports you in every way. Even if your grind size is not right, you can still make a delicious espresso, cappuccino, or latte macchiato. Because the milk frothing indeed also works fantastically in easy mode. It's just fun. The machine is enjoyable all around. There's nothing to discuss about that. There is a disadvantage regarding the grinder that is really something the manufacturer should perhaps work on. As you can see, it has a relatively large dispersion. There is also a funnel that Ligre offers. With it, the dispersion is somewhat less, but we have found that the static charge increases. That's a pity. And in conclusion, I would like to thank you for watching. It's great that you were here. We are very curious about what you think of the machine. Feel free to write it in the comments, and we are happy to answer any questions about it. We are of course happy about every like and every new subscriber, but we also appreciate criticism as we are constantly learning, including from your comments. We find that really exciting. And until next time, we simply wish you 1,000 good things, drink good coffee. Thank you very much and see you soon.